You're a coat I'm done wearing. He said it in my own front hall. And a week later, he had nothing. The porch light was flickering the way it had flickered for 2 years, and under that stutter of yellow, I stood on my own top step and watched a woman I had never met carry a garment bag through my front door like she owned the hooks inside it. Ron blocked the doorway with his shoulder the way he blocked everything he didn't want to look at. He had a spray tan he'd gotten in April, in Rockford, at a place that charged $40, and it made him look like a man who had decided to become somebody else and gotten the color wrong. Behind him, I could smell the pot roast I'd put in the slow cooker that morning, going soft and brown 7 hours in, and I remember thinking the stupidest thing, that nobody had turned it off. "Norma," he said my name like an eviction notice, "let's not do a scene. You're a coat I'm done wearing. That's all. 35 years, and you were warm for a while, and now you're just heavy." The girlfriend laughed from inside the house. My house. And Ron pulled the door most of the way shut so the porch light caught the brass numbers, 1974, my father had screwed into the frame himself. What Ron didn't know, standing in that doorway with another woman's garment bag over his arm, was whose name was on the deed under his feet. Both deeds. He'd signed 100 papers over 35 years and read maybe 4 of them. He thought the house was ours and the shop was his. He was wrong about both, and he had been wrong for a very long time. Let me take you back, because a thing like this doesn't happen in a doorway. It happens over decades, one signature at a time. I was born Norma Kessel in 1961 in a rented half of a duplex on Kishwaukee Street on the south end of Rockford, Illinois. My father, Walter Kessel, ran a heating and sheet metal shop out of a rented garage and wore a gray Dobbs fedora every day of his working life. A real one, felt, with a black grosgrain band gone soft at the pinch from his thumb and forefinger setting it and resetting it 40 times a day. He used to say a man's hat told you whether he respected the day he was walking into. He respected every one of them. He died broke on paper and rich in a way the bank never understood, because Walter Kessel understood one thing about America that his own daughter would spend a lifetime proving. You never, ever own the tools. You own the building the tools sit in. He told me that in 1979, the winter I was 18, sitting at the kitchen table with a shoebox of receipts and that fedora hung on the nail by the back door. "Landlord raised my rent again, Normie," he said. "3rd time in 4 years. I fix his furnace for free, and he charges me for the privilege of standing in his garage." He tapped the table. "Buy the box the business lives in. Let the other fellow sweat the tools." I heard it. I was the kind of girl who heard things and put them somewhere I could find them later. I went to Rock Valley College at night and took bookkeeping and real estate principles while I clerked days at the Rockford Trust on East State for $4.10 an hour. By 1983, I had my Illinois broker's license and a savings account with $2,140 in it that I had built quarter by quarter. That was the year I met Ron Sedlak at an Elks Lodge fish fry, and I will not lie to you and tell you he was always a bad man. He was funny then. He fixed my carburetor in the parking lot in the rain and didn't take a dime. And he had big warm hands and a laugh you could hear across a room. And when I told him I wanted to own buildings someday, he said, "Then you will," like it was already done. We married in June of 1985 at St. Anthony's. I wore my mother's dress, taken in 2 sizes, and my father walked me down the aisle in that same gray fedora, and afterward, he pressed it into my hands in the church basement and said, "Hold on to something of mine, Normie, so you remember whose girl you are." I have held on to it for 41 years. I want you to keep it in your mind, that hat, because it comes back. Ron was a good mechanic. Nobody ever said different. He could hear a bad wheel bearing from across a service bay. But Ron liked the feeling of owning more than he liked the work of owning. And that difference is the whole story. Here is the part he never understood, because he never once sat still long enough to hear it. When my father died in 1991, he left me the shop's savings, $46,000, and a lesson. I did not spend that money on tools. In 1993, I put $38,000 down on a squat brick building at 2210 Harrison Avenue, 4,800 square feet, a former tire store with 2 bays and an office, and I took the mortgage in my own name, Norma Kessel Sedlak, because I had the credit and the license, and Ron, God love him, had 2 repossessions and a lien from a boat he never should have bought. The loan officer at Alpine Bank actually suggested it be that way. I didn't argue. Ron opened Sedlak Auto and Truck in that building in 1994. He hung his sign, he painted the bays, he told everyone at the Elks it was his shop, and I let him, because a marriage is a thing you carry together, and I did not need my name on his sign to know whose building it was. I collected no rent from my own husband. I paid the mortgage out of the commissions I earned selling houses all over Winnebago County. I closed 31 homes in 1998 alone. And every month for 28 years, I paid that note down until, in 2021, I paid it off. The building at 2210 Harrison was mine, free and clear, 100% in my name alone. Ron had never made a single payment on it. He thought the landlord was some entity called Kessel Holdings that sent a statement once a year. Kessel Holdings was me at the kitchen table with a fedora on the nail behind me. The house was the same story, only quieter. We bought the 2-story Dutch Colonial at 1974 Ridgewood in 1996, the one with the brass numbers my father would later screw in himself the summer before he'd have died if he hadn't already. I put down $22,000 of my own commission money. The mortgage, again, was mine. The credit was mine. The deed, when we took it, read Norma Kessel Sedlak, a married woman, as sole owner. And Ron signed a quitclaim in the pile of closing papers without reading it because the closer slid it across at 4:50 on a Friday and he wanted to get to the game. He initialed where the little flag pointed. 26 years later, he still thought we owned that house together. He thought a lot of things. I want to be fair to the early years because they were good, and I won't let what he became poison what he was. We took the kids, our son Danny and our daughter Ray, to Rock Cut State Park every 4th of July. Ron grilled bratwurst and burned them exactly the same way every single time, and we teased him about it for 20 years. He coached Danny's Little League. He cried at Ray's wedding. There was a decade in the middle there where I would have told you I had the whole thing. The man, the kids, the buildings, the good name in a town that watched. My father's fedora hung on the hook by the back door, and I touched the brim on my way out to a closing for luck, and I believed the story I was living in. The erosion came slow, the way water gets into brick. You don't see the crack until the wall's already soft. The first wrong note was money going quiet. Around 2016, Ron stopped talking about the shop's numbers at dinner. For 20 years, he'd complained about parts markups and slow-pay customers. I knew that shop's cash flow better than he did because I did the books until 2015, when he hired a girl named Kayla to do them and told me, warmly, that I'd earned a break from his headaches. I filed that. A man who has always shared his headaches and suddenly wants to spare you from them is not being kind. He is closing a door. The second note was the accountant. Our accountant of 19 years, Phil Brower, called me in 2017 to say Ron had moved the shop's books to a new firm downtown and, by the way, had I meant to be taken off the shop's business accounts as a signer? I had not. I said, "Leave it, Phil. It's fine," in the light voice, and I hung up and wrote the date on the back of an envelope and put it in the drawer of the secretary desk in the hall, the drawer that stuck, that you had to lift and pull, that everyone in the family knew to jiggle. I started a file that day, not out of suspicion exactly, out of habit, my father's habit. You keep the paper. The third note had perfume on it. Spring of 2023. Ron came home from a parts run to Belvedere, smelling like a department store, and there was a receipt in his truck's cup holder from the Cheesecake Factory at Cherryvale Mall for $88.40. 2 entrees, 2 cocktails, on a Tuesday I'd spent showing a split level on Auburn to a young couple who couldn't get financing. I didn't say a word. I photographed the receipt where it lay. I put it in the file. The porch light flickered that night when I came in, and I remember standing under it thinking, very calmly, that I had married a man who thought I was stupid, and that being underestimated is the cheapest armor a woman ever gets to wear for free. The 4th note was the loudest, and I almost missed it. In January 2024, a mortgage broker I'd known for years, a decent man named Ted Okafor, called me, carefully, the way you call someone when you're doing them a kindness that could cost you. "Norma," he said, "did you know Ron's been in shopping for a cash-out refinance? On the Ridgewood House and the Harrison Building both. He listed himself as owner on both applications." A pause. I couldn't help but notice the title work doesn't, agree with him. I sat down at the kitchen table. Behind me, on the hook by the back door, my father's fedora. I looked at it for a long minute. "No, Ted," I said. "I didn't know. Thank you. Don't approve anything." "And Ted, don't tell him you called me." "Wasn't going to," he said. "Your dad bought my dad's furnace at cost in '81. I remember." That is the town I built my life in. It remembers. So I knew that January, 18 months before the porch, that Ron intended to borrow money against buildings he did not own, and that he believed he owned them. I did not confront him. Confrontation is what you do when you want to feel something. I wanted to win something. Those are different projects. I called Laureen. Laureen Baptiste has been my best friend since 1988, when we sold houses out of the same Century 21 office on Mulford and split a desk and a phone. She is the only person alive who has read every one of my closing files, because for 30 years we've reviewed each other's paperwork over her kitchen table on Sunday afternoons. Hers, because Ron didn't like Laureen, and a man not liking your best friend is one more piece of paper for the file. Laureen is 66 now, still sells, still catches a bad title commitment faster than any lawyer in Winnebago County. When I told her what Ted had said, she was quiet for a moment, and then she said the truest thing anybody said to me in that whole 2 years. "Norma," she said, "he thinks the buildings are his because you never once made him feel like a guest in them. That's not your sin. But now you're going to have to let him find out what he actually signed." "Not yet," I said. "No," she agreed. "Not yet. First we get the paper clean and the lawyer good." The lawyer good. That was Marsh. Adele Marsh had done my real estate closings since 2009, and I trusted her the way you trust a surgeon who tells you the boring truth. I made an appointment under my own maiden name so it wouldn't cross Ron's desk. Silly, maybe, but I'd gone quiet by then, all the way quiet. The quiet of a woman who has decided. In her office on North Court Street, with a legal pad and a pot of tea nobody touched, Adele Marsh laid it out plain. "Let me make sure I understand what you're actually holding," she said. She had the title reports I'd pulled spread across her desk. "You are the sole owner of the marital residence at 1974 Ridgewood. Deeds clean, in your name only, since 1996. Your husband quitclaimed at closing. And you are the sole owner, free and clear, no mortgage, of the commercial building at 2210 Harrison, where he operates Sedlak Auto and Truck." She looked up. "There is no lease, Norma. In 28 years, you never signed one with him." "No," I said. "I never charged him rent." She took her glasses off. "Then legally, he is not a tenant. He is what we call a tenant at sufferance. Do you understand what that means for you?" "Tell me plain," I said. Marsh always told it plain, but I liked to make her say it. "It means," she said, "that the shop is his in the way a coat on a hook is his. The hook is yours. Any morning you choose, with the proper notice, you can take the hook back. He owns the wrenches and the sign and the accounts receivable. He does not own 1 square foot of the floor they sit on. And the house he lives in? That you can take back too. He has no ownership stake in either building. None. I looked out her window at the county courthouse across the street, the building where all of this would eventually be true on the record, and I felt the click. Not tears. I want you to understand there were no tears. Not then and not later, though I'd cried plenty in 2017 and 2018 when I still thought this was a marriage I could save. This was different. It was the sound a deadbolt makes, a quiet, mechanical, final little click. And after it, a person can do anything. Then here's what we're going to do, I said. Nothing. For now. He's going to keep believing he owns it all, because a man who thinks he's holding 4 aces, that's everything. We're going to let him bet everything. Marsh smiled, just a little. You'd have made a hell of a lawyer, Norma. My father made a hell of a sheet metal man, I said. I just kept his one good idea. Here is what quiet preparation actually looks like, because in the movies, it's a montage, and in real life, it's 18 months of ordinary Tuesdays. I did not scream. I did not hire a man in a car to follow him, though Lorene offered to do it herself for free out of professional interest. I did the boring, devastating work of a woman who keeps the paper. I pulled certified copies of both deeds from the Winnebago County Recorder, $52 in copy fees, and put them in a folder. I had Marsh draft and hold 2 documents. A 30-day notice to terminate the tenancy at 2210 Harrison, and a document giving Ron 30 days' notice to vacate 1974 Ridgewood. Both dated and signed by me, both sitting in Marsh's drawer, unfired. I quietly separated what could be separated. Over 11 months, I moved my own commission income, my real money, always kept in my own account since 1985 because my father taught me that too. And I opened a new operating account for Kessel Holdings at a different bank, the Stillman on Perryville, where Ron had never set foot. The joint checking, the joint savings, the joint money market with $71,000 in it that had accumulated over 35 years of 2 incomes. Those I left exactly alone. I want to be clear about that. I did not touch a dollar of the joint accounts. I left them sitting there like a baited hook because I knew my husband, and I knew that a man planning to leave a coat doesn't leave money on a hook. He grabs it. And when he grabbed it, the grabbing would be his, on the record, in his hand. I told my children carefully and only what was true. Danny, who was 38 and a paramedic in Madison, said, "Mom, whatever you need." Ray, 34, cried and then got angry, and then, this is my girl, asked, "Do you have a lawyer, and is she good?" I said, "Marsh." Ray said, "Then he's already lost. He just doesn't know it." And I told Lorene everything, always, on Sundays, at her kitchen table. And one Sunday in the fall of 2024, she reached across and put her hand flat on my father's fedora, which I'd taken to carrying with me, actually carrying it in the passenger seat of my Buick, the way you carry a witness. And she said, "Walter would be so proud he can't stand it." I had to look out the window for a minute after that. The last piece was timing, and Ron handed me the date himself. Our 35th wedding anniversary had been in 2020, lost to the shutdown. So in the spring of 2025, our daughter Ray, before she knew the full shape of things, planned a big anniversary party for us, a do-over, at the Tabala Event Center on Sandy Hollow Road in Rockford, the second Saturday in June, 110 guests, a caterer, a slideshow. By the time the invitations went out, everything had changed, and Ron had made his move. And Ray came to me white-faced, saying she'd cancel it. I told her not to. Half the party, I said. Every single guest. And Ray, put your father on the schedule to give a toast at 8 o'clock. She stared at me. "Mom, why would you?" "Because," I said, Your grandfather always told me you settle accounts in the room where the debt was bragged about. Ron told this whole town he built an empire. He can stand in front of them one more time. Now, the porch, May of 2025, 3 weeks before the party. I've been in Chicago 2 days at a real estate conference. I came home Thursday evening, and there was a Lexus in my driveway I didn't recognize, and the porch light stuttering, and my key already turning when Ron opened the door and stood in it. Behind him, a woman, 30s, blonde, in my kitchen, in socks, opening my cabinets. Her name, I would learn, was Brittany, and she was 31, and she did the shop's books now, and Ron had moved her into 1974 Ridgewood while I was gone. He'd had a locksmith out. My key still worked because he was too cheap to do the back. He told me I was a coat he was done wearing. He told me 35 years had made me heavy. He said we'd sort out the money later. And here's the thing. He said it kindly, in the tone you'd use to let a dog outside. And behind him, Brittany laughed. And the pot roast I'd started that morning out of habit was going soft in the cooker. And my father's fedora was on the hook, right there in the front hall, where I'd hung it that week, 6 feet from Ron's shoulder. And he didn't even see it. Later, I said, just the one word. And I picked my father's hat off the hook because I would not leave it in a house with those two. And I turned and walked back to my car. And Ron actually called after me, "Take the roast. I don't want it stinking up the place." I drove to Lorene's. I did not cry. I set the fedora on her kitchen table between us, and she looked at it and then at me and said, "It's time, isn't it?" He cleaned out the money today, I said. My phone had buzzed twice on the drive with the fraud alerts I'd set up 11 months earlier on the joint accounts. Ron had moved $71,000 out of the joint money market and $9,400 out of the joint checking into a new account with Brittany's name on it, all in one afternoon. The same afternoon he moved her into my house. Every dollar documented, time-stamped, his signature, his hand, on the record. He grabbed the hook, Lorene said softly. He grabbed the hook, I said. Now call Marsh. Fire everything. Adele Marsh fired everything the next morning, a Friday, exactly as we'd built it 18 months before. The 30-day notice to vacate the house, served by a process server named Guillermo, at 1974 Ridgewood at 9:15 a.m., handed to Ron in my front hall. The 30-day notice to terminate the tenancy at 2210 Harrison, served on him at the shop at 11:40, in front of Kayla and 2 mechanics. And a certified letter to Ron's new attorney, some strip mall fellow named Dukes, who'd taken his case for a flat fee, enclosing certified copies of both deeds and a one-line cover note from Marsh. Please advise your client of the actual state of title. Ron called me 19 times that Friday. I answered none of them. Lorene sat with me at her table, and we let the phone buzz itself in circles like a fly on its back. And once she picked it up, looked at his name, and set it face down with 2 fingers like she was tucking in a child. "There," she said. "Sleep." Marsh told me later what happened in Dukes' office when he opened the envelope, because Dukes told her, lawyer to lawyer, off the clock, half admiring. Ron had come in swaggering about his buildings and his plan to buy Norma out cheap. Dukes pulled the deeds out, read them twice, set them down, and said, "Ron, I have to ask you something, and I need the true answer. Whose name did you think was on these?" And Ron said, "Both of ours." And Dukes said, "It's hers. Only hers. On both. You quit-claimed the house in '96. You never had a lease on the shop." And there was, Dukes said, a full 30 seconds where Ron didn't say anything at all. But the room where the debt was bragged about was the party, and I wanted the whole town in it. The second Saturday in June, the Tabala Event Center, the big hall, 110 people who had known us for decades, the Elks crowd, the church crowd, cousins, the mechanics, Ted Okafor and his wife, Phil Brower, the old accountant, Ray and Danny and their families, Lorene at my right hand in a green dress, Adele Marsh at a back table in a blazer with a slim folder in front of her that nobody looked at twice. Ray had gone ahead with all of it, the slideshow, the bratwurst burned jokes. And Ron came, because Ron could not imagine not being the center of 110 people. And because, this is the part that still amazes me, he still thought he could win. Dukes had told him the law, Ron had heard it, and decided the law was a negotiating position. He came in a new blue sport coat with Brittany parked in the car outside, and he worked the room shaking hands, and at 8 o'clock Ray, God bless her steady voice, took the microphone and said, "And now my father would like to say a few words." Ron stood up, glass in hand, tan under the banquet lights. 35 years, he started, is a long time to build something, and I built a lot. This shop, I stood up. I didn't raise my voice. I have never once in this story raised my voice, and I did not start then. I just stood at my own anniversary party, holding my father's gray fedora against my chest with both hands, and the room went quiet, the way a room does when the wrong person stands. And Ron stopped. "You built a lot, Ron," I said. "Let's tell everybody exactly what." And Adele Marsh at the back table opened her slim folder. I did not give a speech. My father taught me you don't argue with a man when you can hand him a document. I walked the length of that hall to my husband, and I set 2 certified deeds on the table in front of him, face up, the county recorder's purple stamp bright under the lights. And I said, so the near tables could hear, and then the far ones as it traveled. The house you moved your girlfriend into is at 1974 Ridgewood. That deed has one name on it, mine. You signed it away in 1996. You have 24 days left to be out. I set the second one down. The building your shop sits in is 2210 Harrison, 4,800 square feet, paid off in 2021, one owner, mine. You've never had a lease. You have 24 days left there, too. You could hear the ice machine in the caterer's station. That's how quiet it was. Ron's face. I had wondered for 18 months what it would do, and I'll tell you. The tan didn't change, but everything under it did. The color goes out of a man's lips first, I learned. His hand was still holding the toast glass, and it started to shake, so the ice ticked against the side. Tick, tick, tick. And he set it down too hard, and champagne went over the rim onto the deed, and he actually flinched back from the paper like it was hot. He looked at the deeds. He looked at Dukes' business card he'd apparently kept in his breast pocket like a talisman. He looked at the 110 faces of the town he'd bragged to, and every one of them had just watched him find out he owned nothing. "You can't," he said. "Norma, the money. I'll put the money back. We can—" "You took $80,400 out of our joint accounts on the 22nd of May, I said. The same afternoon you moved her in. Every transfer's documented. My attorney has all of it. You'll be putting it back, yes. That's not a favor you're offering. That's a judgment you're going to sign. This is my shop," he said, and his voice cracked on my. And that's the sound I'll keep, that crack, because it was the exact sound of a man realizing the floor he's standing on was never his. 35 years, it's my building, I said quietly. You just rent the air in it, and you're a month behind. Someone laughed. I won't pretend I minded. He tried, in front of everyone, to make it about me. He said I was cold. He said I'd hidden this from him for decades, planned it, trapped him. And that's when Phil Brower, our old accountant, 71 years old, stood up at his table, the conscience witness, the one who took her side without being asked. Phil said, not loud, "Ron, she didn't hide it. You quit-claimed that house in front of me. I was the accountant at the closing. You didn't read it because you never read anything. That's not a trap. That's just a document you signed and didn't respect." And he sat back down and that was the ball game. Because when the mildest man in the room says the quiet part, it's over. Ron left the party alone. Brittany was gone from the parking lot by the time he got out there. I heard later she'd found somebody at the shop had told her the truth about who owned it. And a girl who moves in for a house tends to move out when the house evaporates. The last I saw of my husband that night was his blue sport coat going out the double doors of the Tabala, and behind me, 110 people I'd known my whole life, and Loreen's hand coming to rest on my shoulder, and my father's fedora still held against my chest. A week later, he had nothing. That's not a figure of speech. Let me give you the accounting, because I am my father's daughter, and I keep the paper. He was out of the house at 1974 Ridgewood in 19 days, ahead of the notice, because a man cannot stand to be evicted from a place he told everyone he owned. He signed a judgment returning $80,400 to the joint marital estate, which the divorce split down the middle, so the grab bought him exactly nothing. Sedlak Auto and Truck had 30 days to vacate 2210 Harrison, and it turns out a repair shop with no building is just a pile of tools in a parking lot. Ron couldn't find another 4,800 square foot bay in Rockford under $4,200 a month, which he did not have, because he'd spent his half of 35 years on boats and a girlfriend and a spray tan. He sold the tools. He sold the sign. Kayla and the two mechanics came to work for the new tenant I put in that building, a young couple, Marisol and Dev Anand, who'd been renting a cramped bay across town and always paid on time and always said good morning. I gave them a fair lease and their first month free. That was my one generous act, and it wasn't for show. It was because my father taught me the whole point of owning the box is that you get to decide who works safe and dry inside it. Ron rents a one-bedroom now, out on Auburn, from a landlord who charges him every dollar and fixes nothing. And I understand the porch light out there flickers. And I understand he's mentioned to a few people at the Elks that he was cheated. And I understand that nobody at the Elks has bought that man a beer since June. Because a town that remembers Walter Kessel buying a furnace at cost in 1981 also remembers exactly who stood up at the Tabala with her father's hat against her chest and who cracked on the word my. I did not preach at him. I never have. You don't need to when the deeds do the talking. It's a Sunday in October now, 2025. I'm at Loreen's kitchen table, where I've been on Sundays for 37 years, and she's pouring tea neither of us will finish, and Ray's kids are in the yard. And Danny called this morning from Madison, just to hear my voice. On the table between Loreen and me is a leather folder with the two deeds in it, 1974 Ridgewood and 2210 Harrison. Both of them clean, both of them mine, the way they've quietly been for decades. Loreen taps the folder and says, "The heavy coat," and we both laugh, because that's the joke now. That's what the whole town says. Norma's the heaviest coat in Rockford. She's got 2 buildings in her pockets. I drive home to 1974 Ridgewood in the Buick with my father's fedora on the passenger seat, where it's ridden through all of this, like a witness who never once looked away. The house is mine. The porch light. I had the electrician out in July, and it doesn't flicker anymore. It just burns, steady and yellow, over the brass numbers my father screwed in with his own hands. I let myself in the front door with my own key to my own house, and the hall is quiet, and there's the empty hook by the door where a hat belongs. I take my father's gray Dobbs fedora, 41 years in my keeping, the band worn soft at the pinch by his thumb and mine, and I hang it on the hook by the door of the house that's mine.